Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review for Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. I have been intending to start this series for years. I have had such high hopes and high regard, I guess, for the series before I had even read it because of how well people talk about it. I put it on a 5-star predictions video and it didn't exactly pan out the way I wanted it to. I did like it, and I kind of want to talk through some of my feelings behind it and explain why I didn't love it as much as so many other people seem to. This is the first book in an epic 9-book space opera series. It follows 2 main characters, and one of them, he is an ice miner just doing like a routine job. When his ship picks up the distress call of another, he's sent with a small crew of people to figure out what went wrong, and what he discovers rocks the intergalactic community to its core, and a lot of mystery ensues with huge consequences and just war everywhere. Content warnings for it include disease and infection, murder, mentions of abuse, assault, and rape, gun violence, and suicide ideation. I think this series overall has a lot of potential to be great, but as a first book, it was a little unsatisfying, and I think it's almost in what was promised or how the story itself is talked about. It's talked about like a big epic space opera, and what I think of that is many perspectives, things going all the way wrong, and that's not entirely what this story is. It's more of an insular story in which a couple of key characters are making a lot of decisions and like big things are happening in the background. What they do and discover and basically force does affect the greater world, but we don't really get to see that, and that's one of the things I found the most frustrating about this story. And to move on straight into the world building, there was some stuff I really liked, and a lot of it I kind of found frustrating and didn't think that we were given enough information. I really liked the ideas behind this not being like humanity's final form. It's set in an era where humans have started to colonize Mars and colonize other places. Still a lot of struggles. There's a lot of strife between different colonies, but it's not like a perfect. There's still a lot of instability, and like 1 or 2 really bad things could occur and that could destroy a colony, and I like that sort of instability. I could have used more of the political stuff, but I did like those ideas and I'm excited to see them expanded upon in the future. I liked some of the sciencey concepts that were also brought when like they were flying and stuff. They were explained to make sense to me, who has like no knowledge of science, but it made sense in this made up science way. Like there's some cool stuff that happens in the ships, and like when they're wearing their suits, they're like pricked with certain drugs, or like their bodies can adjust to what's actually happening, because if not, like their bodies would break down. That stuff was really cool and unique to my limited knowledge in sci-fi. I would have liked a lot more stuff in terms of the world to be developed. What's happening with the governments? Why are they so, like, what's making them choose to continue on with these decisions? And all of that happening distantly was frustrating to me personally, and I know we'll probably get more of that in the future. I wanted more. And with this story, again, being so insular and really focused on like 2 main perspectives and how they are basically driving the whole plot forward, how they are informing what's happening to this world. I think this book could have been really good if our characters were great, and that I think is my biggest disappointment in this story. I could have settled for not knowing what was really going on with the world itself and been patient enough and been like, you know what, that's okay, it's the first book, let's move on. If the characters were strong, and I don't think the characters were particularly that strong, and that's kind of where some of my biggest struggles lie. You know what I mean. Holden is sort of our everyman. He's pretty upstanding, and him as a character, I think he was fine, and he actually displays a decent amount of growth. He's kind of challenged on some of his ideals, and at the end I'm interested to see where he goes and what he chooses to do in the future. But he's not the most dynamic character I've ever met. He's kind of like the straight man. He's not super engaging. He's okay. He's perfectly fine. Hopefully he gets more interesting in the later books. Miller, the detective, I just wasn't digging from the start. I didn't love the tone that he was kind of written with. I think where his arc went, I understood what the authors were trying to accomplish, but sort of the inciting incidents of that made me deeply uncomfortable. I think they could have done a better job establishing his sort of maybe instability a little bit earlier. It seemed almost like he was being sold as one of like the good cops in this world, and they could have made a couple of decisions instead of trying to sell us on that would have made his kind of descent and his arc a little bit easier to stomach for me. Like, you're obsessed with an 18-year-old, sir, that you haven't even met. Like, it was weird. I also was really disappointed with the side characters. They had the opportunity to make this really cool found family that has gone through so much, that has so much to fear because of their actions in inciting an intergalactic war, and they also fell kind of flat. The romance in here was again flat. Luckily it wasn't a large portion of here, but I was just rolling my eyes when the romance started moving. But the crew altogether, I would have loved to have maybe a little bit more banter and maybe a couple more quiet scenes with them trying to digest what went with them and how they tend to rely on one another. There were a couple times that happened. I wanted more. If they gave me a good found family in here, I would have forgiven a lot more of some of the construction issues I had with this story, but it's just not quite what we get. The plot I liked quite a bit. There are some very standard things that happen. It's a sci-fi, things are getting blown up, like ship battles. I liked the way action was described. I found it as easy to picture as it ever will be for me, because a lot of the times when I'm reading sci-fi, it's just like whoosh, over my head. But it wasn't like impossible to understand what was going on, which is usually what happens for me. I liked a lot of the new elements that it brought to the table, the sort of biological-ish stuff that's going on that kind of turns a little horror-esque. Like, that stuff I thought was really cool. I apologize if you can hear my sibling in the other room yelling. Hopefully, because my mic is so close to me, you can't hear him screaming, but we'll see. I also like the element of sort of a murder-ish mystery and the elements of intrigue, not knowing who to trust, and kind of that sort of back and forth was cool. I can assume we're going to get more of that also in the future, not knowing which like entity to trust. Oh my god, this is what I get for trying to film during the day when other people are home. I just think if I had liked the characters and found them so much more compelling, I would have feared for them more, bought into the story more, and not read it so much at a distance. But the plot was entertaining, and one of the reasons why I am very interested in continuing on with the series. The writing itself, I wasn't really for or against, kind of felt middle of the road. I think the biggest issues I had, again, were with the construction and the way they chose to write it and not the prose itself. I could kind of tell that this was a first book from this author duo. The constant cliffhangery at the end of each chapter got a little overboard, overdone, especially because this book is over 500 pages, so that just became tedious after a while. It also, I think, leans into being a little too over-descriptive. There's a lot of times where it feels a little bit like filler, what's going on. I did like the visuals, how the ships and the battles and stuff were described, and that is a big plus in my book, because again, sometimes just over the head, like I can't even picture. It's just like, okay, yeah, 2 ships battling. But the description of action, all that stuff, I think they did overall do a pretty good job. So this book clearly wasn't my favorite. It's one of those frustrating things where you can see its potential, but it didn't quite live up for me. There was a lot of things I like, and I think a lot of things I could like in the future of the series if things develop the way I hope. But as a first book, as a first entry, it just didn't feel like a full, completed, satisfying story. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I will continue on with the series. I actually own the next 3 books because I've picked them up all used. So I am invested. I am going to try out a couple more installments in the series to overall see what I think. But yeah, unfortunately this one is a 3-star. Not bad, but not fantastic. And I'm hoping more for this from the sequels. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Leviathan Wakes. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye.